I only realized something was wrong when I saw her seat was bone dry, even though water was dripping steadily from her raincoat onto the floor. It was almost midnight, the kind of rain that turns roads into silver rivers and forces everyone to stay inside. For drivers like me, though, that's prime time. The requests start flooding in, people desperate to get home, soaked, their umbrellas defeated by the storm. That night, I was exhausted. I'd been driving for 8 hours straight. My dashboard clock glowed 11:47 p.m., and the ping came through. Pick up Riverside and 8th. It's mostly warehouses and service alleys over there, a strange spot for a pickup at this hour. But I've had weirder, so I accepted and headed over. As I turned onto Riverside, my headlights caught her immediately. A tall, thin woman in a clear plastic raincoat, standing alone by the curb. The rain was coming down so hard, blurred everything around her, but she was perfectly still. She wasn't even shielding her face from the downpour. I slowed to a stop. Without a word, she stepped forward and opened the back door. The first thing that hit me wasn't her appearance, but the sound. A soft, sticky, slapping noise, like wet fabric being peeled apart. Her raincoat glistened under the cabin light as she slid inside. "Cold night?" I said, trying to sound friendly. "Rough weather." She didn't answer. I glanced in the rearview mirror. Her face was pale, her dark hair plastered to her cheeks. She just stared out the window, watching the rain hammer against the glass. "Where to?" I asked after a moment. She answered quietly, "Ridgeview." Ridgeview was 10 miles out, past the industrial district, right near the old bridge. Where? Well, where people sometimes go to end things. Still, I tapped it into the GPS and started driving. The rain pounded on the roof like a drum solo, the wipers groaning with every swipe. The silence in the car was heavy. Out of habit, I adjusted the mirror slightly to get another look at her. And that's when I noticed it. Her coat was dripping steadily, droplets falling from the sleeves, the hood, the hem. But the seat beneath her was completely, utterly dry. No dark patches, no dampness on the leather. Nothing. At first, I thought I was seeing things. I flicked on the dome light for a second, pretending to look for my phone charger. The seat was spotless, dry as a bone, but her coat was still dripping. I quickly turned the light off, my heart starting to pound. She hadn't moved an inch, still staring out the window, her face blank, raindrops sliding down the plastic like tears. We drove in silence for a few more miles before she finally spoke again. Her voice was faint, almost too calm. "You shouldn't drive this late." "Yeah," I said carefully, "not the best weather for it." Her reflection in the mirror looked back at me. Only she wasn't looking at me. Her real face was still turned toward the window, but in the mirror, she was smiling. A polite, knowing smile. I froze. My eyes flicked between the road and the mirror, my brain refusing to process what I was seeing. Her reflection's lips were still curved upward, even as her real mouth stayed perfectly still. The rain seemed to get louder. Then she whispered, almost to herself, "You passed it?" I blinked. "Past what?" "The bridge," she murmured. "You missed it." I looked around. The nearest bridge was still miles ahead. "We're not there yet," I said, my voice barely a whisper. She didn't respond, but her reflection, her smiling reflection, tilted its head slightly, its eyes locked on mine through the glass. I couldn't breathe. The air felt thick, charged with static. Then came another sound. A faint dripping from behind me, but not from her coat. It was coming from the ceiling. A drop of water hit the top of my head, then another, and another. I turned just enough to glance over my shoulder. The entire back of the car, the windows, the ceiling, the partition, was covered in condensation, like the inside of a freezer. And faintly, on the fogged glass of the rear door, someone had drawn lines. Long streaks, like fingers dragged through steam. I snapped my head forward. gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles ached. When I looked in the mirror again, her reflection wasn't smiling anymore. It was grinning. Wide. Way too wide. I slammed my foot on the accelerator, tires splashing through puddles. My pulse was thundering in my ears. Then, as suddenly as she'd appeared, she spoke again. Her voice was different now, colder, deeper. Stop here. We were still miles from any bridge. Just an empty stretch of road with trees on either side. Every part of me screamed to keep driving, but my foot moved on its own. The car slowed to a stop. She opened the door and stepped out into the rain. I swear the downpour didn't even touch her. Before closing the door, she leaned down slightly and said, "You should fix your mirror." Then she was gone, swallowed by the darkness. I just sat there, shaking, the wipers scraping across the windshield. After what felt like an eternity, I turned to check the back seat. It was dry, completely dry. No footprints. No water. Nothing. When I got home, I did something I now regret. I checked my dashcam footage. At the exact moment she said I'd passed the bridge, the camera glitched. The screen filled with static for a split second, then showed a reflection in the mirror, her reflection leaning forward, whispering something directly toward the lens. I went through it frame by frame. Her mouth moved just once. 2 words. "Behind you." The video cut out. The next morning, my car wouldn't start. When I got in to check the battery, there was a faint fog on the inside of the windshield, and traced into it from the rearview mirror downwards were 5 long, dripping streaks, like fingers. Thanks for watching, and if you have a story that keeps you up at night, share it in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more chilling tales. Stay safe out there.